ORILEEDE Yoruba by Professor AdeBanji Akintoye. Introduction. In the following pages, I try to present the glorious picture of our soon-to-come country, our ORILEEDE Yoruba. I try to describe the dreams that are impelling millions of Yoruba men and women in all countries of the world to engage seriously in the Yoruba self-determination struggle, to come together in the countless self-determination organizations and clubs, to keep awake for many hours night after night, putting ideas from their disciplines and professions in writing about our soon-to-come country shall be great, prosperous and powerful in the world. God Almighty made us Yoruba people a great people of talent, intellect, and skills, and large numbers of us are now pouring out those gifts into the ideas that will make our country one of the greatest and most famous countries in the history of the world, and that will make us Yoruba people a loving, laughing, humiliated family of happy and contented men, women, and children. A lot of the intellectual and other effort by our people come to me as a father of our self-determination struggle. Altogether, they make me humble, happy, and proud, employing my own speciality and insight. I hereby put forth point by point the main items of what I perceive to be our nation's purpose, determination, and expectation. I urge all my Yoruba people to read it, and I urge each to endeavor to bring the benefit of his or her specialty to bear on any of its various points. In its totality, these manifestos from those of us who are fighting for our sovereign Yoruba nation, our independent Yoruba country, separate from Nigeria. I live in the unwavering faith and hope that our Yoruba country shall soon be free, and that thereafter we shall see the glory of God upon the life of our free and sovereign Yoruba nation and upon all of us Yoruba people. So we're going to treat we are a nation with a proud root and a proud history. We Yoruba are a nation with a long and proud history. According to our very powerful ancient traditions, we Yoruba are the oldest people or the first of humans in the world. Those traditions tell us that in the beginning of time, when all the surface of the earth was covered by water, the Creator God sent some heavenly beings to come down and establish life on the earth. The heavenly beings descended, bringing with them a chicken, a palm nut, and a small pot filled with the quantity of earth. Their leader was Oduduwa. When they reached the surface of the water, they poured out the earth contained in the small pot, and it formed a small piece of ground. Then they put the chicken on this ground, and the chicken went to work scratching the ground with his claws, and the ground spread and over time became the continent of the earth. They then sowed the palm nut on the ground, and it germinated and became the first plant in the world. The heavenly being themselves became the first humans. Oduduwa became the progenitor of the first people in the world, the Yoruba people, and therefore the progenitors of all humans. This little story of might make our children laugh, but to historians, it is something very serious, very important. It shows that long ago our Yoruba ancestors saw themselves as the first people in the world and had no memory of other or earlier humans before their Yoruba group. They even evolved more details over time to add more strength to their creation myth. For instance, one myth has it that Oduduwa descended by a chain, that the chain is in Ife, the spot where Oduduwa touched down. And very importantly, early Yoruba people evolved patterns of behavior from the certainty of their belief that the Yoruba people are the first humans in the world. Behaviors such as goodwill towards all human groups and hospitality to all foreigners. In the 19th century, in some part of our Yoruba homeland, especially in Ife, some of the first European visitors were puzzled that our people received them as kinsmen who had been long gone and who were returning to visit the origin home of their ancestors. We are pondering this fact of Yoruba history. Some modern scientists who are researching in human genetic history are now saying that the earliest human DNA in the world have been found in our Yoruba nation, and according to all evidence from the archaeological and allied research, we Yoruba, as one distinct cultural group, having been living in the present homeland since as far back as 8,000 years ago. The earliest human bone fossil found in a cave near Akure in Yoruba land and dating to 6000 BC, 8,000 years ago, is the oldest human bone fossil found in West Africa since 8,000 years ago. We Yoruba have owned and held this homeland, and we have developed on it from age to age the highest level of civilization in the Black Africa south of the Sahara. Long before the rest of the Black Africa, we Yoruba began to develop into an urbanized people, a people living in towns and cities. Our homeland was the only urbanized part of the Black Africa for many centuries. We built our first towns in the 9th century AD, the first being the town of Ile-Ife. We built more and more in the following centuries. By the time the earliest European explorer came to the coast of West Africa in about 1417 AD, we already had very many towns and cities all over Yoruba land. Most of them were, by the date, we were one of the most urbanized peoples in the world. Most of the Yoruba city walls were great works of engineering. Modern researchers who have done research on one of the city walls, the Ijebu-Ode city wall, have described it as one of the greatest man-made structures of the ancient world. These researchers added that in terms of the amount of earth and rock that was moved in the constructions of Ijebu-Ode city wall and the Great Pyramid of Egypt, the Ijebu wall was larger than the Great Pyramid. They also added that the surviving segments of the Ijebu city wall are visible from the space. Our urban civilization was a product of our successful economy. The starting base of this successful economy was our agriculture. Taking advantage of our fertile land, our farmers raised more and more kinds of crops and produced increasing volumes of food. Many of them produced food for the urban market and became some of the richest men in society. The first European explorers in the interior of the Yoruba homeland in 1825 and 1826 wrote that throughout their journey, they saw on the both sides of their path extensive plantations of yam, cotton, corn, indigo, oil palm trees, and coconut trees, and they concluded that the Yoruba people were very industrious people. These explorers added that the approach to many Yoruba towns was an imposing avenue of lordly trees, that Yoruba cities and towns were clean habitation, that people who were usually rushed out in the Yoruba cities and towns and villages to see the white explorers were always cleanly dressed, and that Yoruba people were an exceptionally hospitable people everywhere. Our towns were also vibrant centers of trade, craftsmanship, arts, music, producers of cotton goods, especially various kinds of clothes and cotton yarn, smith producing various kinds of metal tools and implementing producers of jewelries, including beads, various kinds of entertainment and entertainers, including mask entertainers, diviners, herbal healthcare providers, and many others. Our homeland was a land of great commerce. Most traders traded only within their towns, and each town various sizes of marketplaces existed. Some of the largest marketplace was famous throughout our country and even beyond our country. One European trader wrote in about 1700 that one of the Yoruba marketplace he visited was at least 4 times the size of the new market in Amsterdam, that not less than 6,000 traders were trading in it that morning, and that he was greatly impressed by the orderliness that prevailed in it. From a long distance away, wrote some explorers, the noise from a large Yoruba marketplace on the market day was like the roaring of a great sea. Many marketplaces offer nighttime trading, This commonly meant that the daytime trading closes at about 6 p.m. and the nighttime trade starts at about 9 p.m. The 1825 to 1826 explorers wrote that when one approached a nighttime market from a distance, it was as if one was approaching a sea of stars because the traders lighted small oil lamps to illuminate the goods they were selling. The 1825-1826 explorers also wrote again and again that the roads connecting the Yoruba towns were generally well kept and were often as level as Bowling Green, that every stretch of the road through each kingdom was very well guarded by the officials of the king, and that traders and other travelers kept all the roads busy day and night. And an American explorer, William Clark, who traveled extensively in Yoruba land in the early 1850s, wrote as follows about the nature and the volume of trade in the Yoruba land in those days. The trade in the native produce and art keeps up the continual intercommunication between the several adjacent towns, the one interchanging its abundance of our one article for that of another. Thus, on those small routes, many seen caravans of fifties passing almost daily from one town to the another, acting as a great reservoirs of trade. On the longer route, a network of trade is carried to a distance of hundreds of miles. Hundreds and thousands of people are thus engaged in carrying trade. Not infrequently, the articles from the Mediterranean and the Western European coast may be seen in close proximity and product of the four quarters of the globe within a circumference whose diameter may be measured by a few yards. When several caravans are thrown together, a correct ideal of the extent of the trade may be found in the imposing numbers that stretch over several miles in length. Most of our biggest traders were women, often specializing in a long distance trade, either taking trade to distant part of the Yoruba homeland or to foreign land. Those taking trade to the foreign countries took Yoruba product to most part of Black Africa, to all points of the West African coast, to interior West African countries as far as Hausa land beyond the River Niger, westward as far as modern Mali and Mauritania, eastward to the country of Kanuri on the Lake Chad, the countries that are now Sudan and the South Sudan, and the countries of the Congo Vale. In these distant foreign countries, some Yoruba products, especially colorful Yoruba cotton cloth and Yoruba beads, were popularly specialties and were avidly sought. When European trade developed along the West African coast from the 15th century, many of the European traders did a profitable trade in buying some Yoruba product, especially colorful Yoruba clothes, as well as beads on the Yoruba coast, taking them for sale on the other part of the coast. In many of these foreign countries, Yoruba traders established Yoruba trading colonies, and some of these have existed till modern times. Along most of the West African coast, Yoruba language was the language of trade. A French Roman Catholic priest, Father Colombin, who visited most of the West African coast in 1636 to 1640, wrote that the Yoruba language was the language of trade everywhere along the coast, and that in fact the peoples of these countries used the Yoruba language in the same way that the peoples of the Europe in this time used the Latin language. That is why the people of every nation spoke their native language. Most of their leading citizens, like traders, rulers, etc., spoke the Yoruba language as well. In the same century, another European explorer, Alfred Dapper, wrote that among one of the nations on the West African coast, the people seldom spoke their native language, but spoke mostly the Yoruba language, which in their countries regard as a noble language. Over this whole dynamic and rich civilization, we Yoruba established an elegant system of leadership and order topped by a monarchic government. Each of our towns was ruled by a king or oba, below whom a number of high and low chiefs bore responsibility for part of the town. The king lived in a large and historic palace with many specialized courtyards, all gorgeously decorated with artistically carved pillars and posts, with murals and colorful insignia. A high sense of grandeur surrounded the urban, as was testified to by countless European explorers over centuries. The whole system of government was governed by two fundamental principles. The first of these was the principle of sovereignty of the people, the principle that power belongs to the people. Thus, we Yoruba rejected the universe practice whereby kings are succeeded automatically by their biological children, and whereby citizens have no role in selections of the kings, and choose instead a system whereby the subjects select their king from among the members of the royal lineage. We Yoruba people love to say proudly that we ourselves select our rulers. Also, as part of the principle of the people's sovereignty, the system gave serious respect and influence to people's associations, such as the age grade associations and the professional or the trade associations like the market women associations, hunter associations, smith association, etc. The role of women was specially provided for in the Yoruba system of leadership and governance. Finally, it was part of the principle of people's sovereignty that every person, young or old, was guaranteed freedom to speak in the affairs of his community, lineage, and association. Thus, the common Yoruba saying, both young and old have some wisdom to contribute. That is our rule from our beginning. The second principle governing the whole political system is the principle that all our Yoruba kings and royal lineage are descendants of the same ancestors. From this principle sprang a large array of belief, practice, dynastics, relationships, rituals, and art forms, all of them asserting and emphasizing the origin of all our kings from the same ancestral family, the oneness of our kingdoms, and the unity of our Yoruba nation as one nation. A Yoruba king, particularly kingdom, might be small, but he reign and glow in his unbroken consciousness of the largeness of his Yoruba family of kings and kingdoms. From the 16th to the 19th century of our kingdoms, the Oyo-Ile kingdom, occupying the northwest part of our national homeland, struck out and built an empire covering part of Yoruba land and other large territories of many Yoruba peoples, up to the territories that are now Benin and Togo republics. The largest empire in the history of the West African forest land, this Oyo Empire was similar to the Australian Empire, in which the German state of Austria built an empire consisting of the German and non-German territories and peoples. When the European Christian missionaries brought Western education to Africa in the mid-19th century, we Yoruba adopted it more strongly than the other part of the Black Africa. Schools quickly sprang up in most Yoruba towns. By the last years of the 1850s, we were already producing university graduates and highly educated professionals, lawyers, doctors, engineers, accountants, surveyors, teachers, writers, etc. The first newspaper in the Black Africa was published in our city of Abeokuta, 1859. Others soon followed in our other cities. At the amalgamation of Nigeria in 1914, we were very much ahead of the rest of Nigeria in education. The first schools did not come to the most of the rest of Nigeria until 1920s, by which time many Yoruba families were already producing their third generation of university graduates. No other Nigerian nation produced their first university graduate until the mid-1930s. In the course of the 1950s, with Nigeria then structured as a federation of three regions, East, North, Western region, each vested with a limited self-government, we Yoruba immediately took our Western region far above and beyond the other two regions in all aspects of development, building our new roads, highways, provisions of urban water supply, advancement in agriculture and agricultural export, establishment of skills development institution for youth, first industrial estate, residential estate in Africa, first television station, first free education program in Africa, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, etc. The free education program proved very revolutionary. It raised us Yoruba people above the rest of the Nigeria, and unofficial statistics commonly circulating in the 1970s had it that though we were Yoruba, were about 24% of Nigeria's population, we Yoruba were 52% of all Nigerian holders of university degrees. 70% of Nigerian holders of higher degrees such as master's and doctorate degrees. Politically, our Western region developed the most democratic system of government and politics and the most professional, competent civil service in Nigeria. Our Western region occasionally gave loans and even grants to Nigeria federal government. Altogether, We Yoruba grandly display our inherent strength as a nation of civilization builders, and we were poised to go higher and higher in the world. That is the first segment, the good news, part two, our prosperity in our Orilede Yoruba by Professor AdeBanji Akintoye. This is Koikimedia, bringing the world closer to your doorstep.